super excited you were willing to sit in the hot seat and to join me today. So really appreciative, especially around the holidays. Holy smokes! I mean,
thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.
Yep. So I had the interview with President Docking. I guess your ultimate boss. Great conversation. I mean, there's a lot of insight there, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But your first year head coach. I just wonder, maybe we could just sort of level set, and could you just talk to me about how you, your soccer journey, how you ended up getting to Adrian College?
I played at Concordia Ann Arbor. I did a couple of years of playing there, and even when I was playing there, I pretty much knew the coaching was going to be what I was going to be doing post-college. I don't think I was ever destined for any kind of business career or sitting behind a desk, as I'm sitting behind a desk now.
Yeah,
for a different
there is
reason.
business. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, I don't think I was ever destined for that. And then I did a couple of years of coaching at Concordia when I finished playing, and kind of dipped my toes into what it was like working in as a coach in college. So recruiting and going on campus visits, just the day-to-day, I was able to see that I worked quite closely with the head coach. So I knew that I would probably end up going into that world once I got done playing. And then after a couple of years of doing that with Concordia, an opportunity came up to go to Detroit Mercy to work with Nick Darren as the assistant coach for what ended up being 2 seasons, which thoroughly enjoyed that time, and that set me up quite nicely then for an opportunity that came around when there was a position here to take the head coaching job, and it was one I wanted to take. I think I was ready to be a head coach at that point, and kind of test some of the things that I felt I wanted to, and had learned along the way, and it was all really good timing. So, but I'm a year into it now, and it's been exactly really what I need and what I wanted as well.
Yeah. All right, so I got to ask a question that just popped into my head. I've always wondered when someone says they think they're ready or they were ready for or are ready for a head coaching job in Division III soccer. Is that a how would I say this? Were you ready from a soccer perspective, like the X's and O's, and you sort of formulated how you would want a team to play, or is it, understanding the recruiting process and sort of your day-to-day, because let's face it, 9 months out of the year is very different than the other 3, right?
Yeah. It. I think from the X's and O's, as you say, I'd had enough experience up to this point, I suppose, of playing and coaching. Coaching in college, coaching youth soccer, I felt like I had done my time to be able to take a head coaching role and lead when it comes to the X's and O's. From the recruiting part, I think that's been, as I am still doing after a year in the job on reflection, there's been a lot of things that I've had to learn, because working at Detroit Mercy is extremely different to working at Adrian. Yeah. The levels, the schools are different. The people you work with are different. The players you work with are different. And now I'm also the one leading it. So it's all been very, very different. I suppose, how ready can you be? I felt at that point I was ready, maybe from a confidence standpoint, to say if somebody gave me my opportunity to lead a program tomorrow, then I would just jump straight, like, headfirst into it, and I would learn on the job. That feels how it's gone. There's definitely some stuff I look back and think, I could have been more prepared with that. I'd like to have had more experiences with that. But I think that's why the job is a good one for me. It's given me a chance to learn on the job. I've had an opportunity to make probably a few mistakes.
Yeah.
And
you're not
but
trying
also,
if you're not making mistakes, by the way. That's the way I see it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and I've been all right with that, and the people around me have been all right with that, and that's why I think this job has been a good one for me.
Right.
I think if my first opportunity had been, let's just say, at Detroit Mercy, there might not be that room for error, perhaps at that level. The requirements from Detroit Mercy, may have been higher or something I wasn't prepared for. So after a year of being here, I don't feel any different. I think it was a perfect job for me at that moment in time. Yeah.
Sorry for the sidetrack there. I always like to ask this because, especially with new hires like yourself, right? Like you're in your seat for a year, right? Like this is your first. You've completed your first full year. Now this fall will be your start of your second, or roughly whatever. Were you giving marching orders when you were hired, or was there a purpose to your hiring, right? Like there's one thing to hire somebody to be a caretaker, like, look, just go do your thing as a soccer, here's some, high level, this is what we need you to do, or was there, we expect you have 3 years to get to this point, and we want you to win or compete for the conference every year. Like, was there any of that?
Well, possibly a little bit. I think coming into this specific job, it was more a case of the, for want of a better word, hierarchy. We're probably looking at the program and thinking, anybody can see from the outside that the last few years have been a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
I also think that the feeling inside the program was more on the negative side. Mm-hmm. The feeling of maybe the players towards the program. They'd lost some games, quite a few games in the last few years. Mm-hmm. And I think initially it was more about coming in to here and starting to get a better feeling about the place. So there was probably some initial things that they wanted is, can the guys immediately have somebody who they respect and enjoy being around? Mm-hmm. And then from there, maybe a little bit more of the longer term planning of, and I'm just kind of, some of this would be actually quoted maybe from conversations, but it is more of a kind of 5 to 7 year thing. Mm-hmm. Thinking they understand that I'm going to probably need time to, if it's recruiting, then I can recruit the players that I would like to recruit. That takes time because there's still people here right now that were recruited from somebody else. And so when you transition to having a different coach, I don't think it was necessarily for me, and they probably wanted the same thing, that you just kind of come in and start waving an axe, and and overnight it turns around and you can suddenly just have your team. So no, that was quite clear from the start. I understood that this was going to, as impatient as I am, this is going to take a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. People were going to be able to have an opportunity, current players were going to be able to have an opportunity to have a different environment, have a different coach. But that was fair because it fitted into the sort of 5 to 7 years that the school had said to me that we think this is a time frame where you can turn around the program. With that was, results. There isn't anything specifically like a first place, second place finish. Mm-hmm. Of course, as anybody would want better results, I think. So I didn't need to be told that. I'm competitive enough myself. I haven't come here to waste anybody's time. I've come here to get results. So probably a little bit of both. There was some things, not necessarily from a conference finish standpoint, but more so from The recruiting standpoint, there's some expectations with regards to recruiting numbers, and there's some expectations when it comes to how the program is viewed in the community or on campus, to faculty and staff, to local schools, that we want to have a good reputation in the community. And then the enjoyment for the players too. I mean, the word that's used these days is culture. The culture of the team needed to improve, and I think they were interested to know what I was going to do to change the culture here. Which actually is quite a difficult answer, because you don't really know the players. I did enough homework on Adrian to know where I was going, but you don't really know until you start the job. How can you change the culture? I have an idea in my head about how I treat people and speak to players, and how I run my training sessions, or how I bring about more of a or how I design or have my group, and how I run the environment, which is probably a lot different to the previous coach, and it's different to many coaches. But you don't know what effect you're going to have on players until you get through the door. Because as I found, some really, really like it, and some are quite hesitant, and some don't really want it at all, and so there's all different responses from players. But no, I wouldn't say anything like a specific number. But I think there were some clear things they wanted to see immediately, and then, to be honest, I think they were happy for me to kind of run with it.
Okay. How difficult, because you mentioned it, like you never know from a cultural standpoint, like how easy or how difficult it's going to be until you actually get in the middle, in the thick of things, and you met the players and you started working with them. Like, how have you found that, and how have you found the receptivity of your players to go in the direction that you want to go?
Well, immediately, because of all the loss of games, I think people are. When I came in, they're really, really interested, of course, and as they probably should be, for right or wrong. Everybody wants to know, how can you help them? So how's this guy gonna come in and do
something for me?
Change the fortunes immediately of this program. I mean, I as much as I think I'm a good coach, I'm not a miracle worker, and I think there's we finished.
You're fired.
After 2 to 3 not so good seasons, I was realistic. I'll tell you now, I don't feel any different about the job from when I first came in to now. The previous season that we've just had, of course, I expected us to do a little bit better than what we did, and I think some games were extremely disappointing that we didn't fall on the more positive side of results. But to go back to the beginning, people initially want to know that, and then I came into the winter, so it took a little bit of time to get to spring practices. I think from then spring practices you start to set the tone as to how things are going to go. People can see what you're like as a coach on the grass, and then people see what you're like just in the office setting. So it took actually a little bit of time for them to really get a feel for who I was, and I really felt like I didn't know who they were until a few months into the job. So that time passed pretty quickly. And then as we got through the spring, that gave me the first chance to really see what these people can do with regards to practice. And then all the other things, fitness, just their general standards, how they talk to each other, how they talk to me. And then you just kind of from there notice your starting point, some of the things you like, some of the things you don't like. And then from there you try and change it. And I think enough time's passed now where a season's passed, where I've seen, and my players will know that, you know, they've been given some warnings about things in the past spring, and then in the fall it was disappointing for some, and some people there were really positive seasons despite the record. So I think at the end of it, Paul, people will either hop on board with what you're doing. You hope that they do, because you can actually try and help some of these people. We really do have people that could, of course, do more, right? And there's a bit more you can squeeze out. And I think that's what I thought about the group at the beginning. You can squeeze out more. How much more can you get out of these current guys if they let you? And then if there's some people who, they just don't quite let you, or they're not just quite willing to do enough, and then you just start to alter things from there. It might be new players. Likelihood in college soccer and recruiting is that it probably will be new players that come through the door, because I think at the end of it, when you strip it back, it is really about doing the best for Adrian. It's about doing the best for men's soccer here.
I always say with players too that maybe don't get on board. This is a blanket statement. This has nothing to do necessarily with Adrian and your situation, but just in my experience, like if they aren't willing to adapt to sort of the things you bring to the table and what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, I always wonder, were they ever bought in at all, even in the old way, right? Like they have a way in which they want to live their life on the soccer field, and it can run contrary to just about any coach that comes up, because it's just the way they are. So anyhow, for me, that's an interesting conversation again, because I wasn't the easiest player to deal with, right? Like, and I totally understand that in hindsight, right? Like you get to an age and you're like, okay, all the lies I told myself about myself are not valid. So and it was that case of, hey, I think I know better. And I think it's just the age, right? And I think a lot of kids think, well, I know better. This is the way I play better if I'm in this position versus that position. Or if we, go route one, or we play the ball, like, you have all these different understandings.
I don't think it's not. I'm still a young coach. I make it really clear to the boys that I've consistently said this. I don't know how long I'm going to say this for, but I'm still learning too. I don't have a magic wand. I come here with some ideas, and I had to probably have some ideas to get the job. So I do have some ideas, but along the way, I'm not so rigid that I'm willing to listen to people. I listen to the boys, and there's probably some truth in what you said, that if they are struggling to get on, you do wonder sometimes what they would get on board with.
That's
Is there a coach out there or a program out there that's more?
Absolutely.
You do wonder, but I'm pretty fair. I think I think there is a place here where it's quite fair people to listen to, and but at the same time, there's an expectation, and I think if you listen, and the players will have their own thoughts, or why. That's the typical question, is why. Everybody wants to know why all the time, and so there's some good dialogue between myself and the players, but you've got to see from the place I started, again, coming in and seeing that, okay, this is what I think, because we've had 3 bad seasons. I think it's been a bit of both. You've seen some people and go, oh wow, they really have changed, and they've decided that, okay, it wasn't all the previous coach's fault, but this new guy can do so much, and he'll give everything, but there's got to be something from us guys. So a little bit of both, as I've found.
I think ultimately no player likes to lose, right? And I think they have to get to a point where, hey, we losing's becoming really common around here. Maybe we should try a different tack. And I think when players get to that point, they become sponges. I'll do whatever you tell me to do if you think it's going to help us win, right? I just think that's the nature of being a competitor, myself personally. But
yeah.
Hey, I'm trying to think if you are. Let me just confirm before I open my mouth and I say something dumb, and they're like, "I can't believe you didn't remember talking to so and so." You are the first Michigan Intercollegiate Athletic Association coach that I have interviewed. So, with that responsibility and that heavy burden on your shoulders, could you just talk to me a little bit about, from your perspective, the MIAA?
You mean in terms of just
just competitiveness, the other teams. I know Calvin. I think everyone knows Calvin, right? And it's outstanding program. But outside of that, maybe you could touch on a few.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fresh into seeing all of the programs. I think it's. I think it'd probably be rude for me to say it was better than I thought it was going to be. I knew about Calvin. I knew about I knew about all the teams.
Yeah.
Not that I'd gone and seen them, kind of, some of them not so much recently, but I knew about the teams, and I knew that I did my homework enough to know where Adrian were relative to the rest of the teams. But that probably wouldn't be too far from the truth. I think there's been a couple of games where I've been like, okay, like, actually the level of competition is probably higher than I thought it was going to be. In the least rude way possible. It just was. Yeah. I think when you start reading about some of the players that are in the conference, I'm sure some of these players are more than capable of playing at Division 2, Division 1, higher levels. No doubt. That makes the job here even tougher because you've got to try and compete against that.
You got work to do.
Got plenty of work to do, yeah. I don't come in the office every day for nothing. You've got to try and...
you just really talk to me. That's all you do. You don't do anything else. You just have conversations with me.
Yeah. We... But no, I think the level is very good. The Calvins and the Hopes, I felt like, were two teams that I felt were, just had players that the comfort level on the ball, the ability to against,
different level,
just from a player standpoint, just a different ability. I think those guys had recruited well, and they've had a little bit of time to put together and find their recruiting spots, and they've had success with it, and so it's good for me to see in the first year of what these teams do. And then other teams, you're just impressed with how they try and find ways to be competitive. Mm-hmm. Because I think if you try and take on Calvin at soccer, simply soccer, it's
good luck.
And we all, I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to coaching. And, I'm again, as much as I think as much as I might think I'm a good coach, you've got to find ways to win. And so I was impressed with how some of the teams have put together they've assembled their teams to find success in the conference. The level of play, pretty good. Mm-hmm. I think, again, facilities, pretty good, but there's also sort of similar to other levels where, I've worked at Detroit Mercy, and you're coming up against, you're traveling to some places where, their locker rooms are bigger than, some of the...
Yeah, haves and have-nots. Well, that's maybe not the right way to say it, but yeah.
No, I think that's every level, so that's probably, again, similar to here. So To be honest, probably a little bit surprised with the level, but at the same time, it was probably to be expected that there's going to be teams at the top of the conference that have more than people at the bottom of the conference. So yeah, some of them expected. Some think the level was a little bit surprising, but a good thing. Pretty well organised, I would say, as well. It's been really easy to sort of navigate my way around. The conference, find people I need to speak to, all of the things we don't really think about in taking the job. Everybody's been there, so I've really enjoyed working in the first year. It's been a good one.
All right, so based on your first season, how close do you think you are to sort of, I'm not saying winning conference or NCAA, any of that, but how close do you think you are to turning things in the right direction? Right, I'm just looking from a schedule standpoint because that's all the visibility I really have at this point. But I look at the games that are 1 goals, right? And there's probably 5 or 6 games that I see that, well, you could, if you're on the right side of the scoreboard, your record looks dramatically different. So I'm just wondering, how close do you think you are to that level, right? To getting to that point.
Yeah, that's soccer, right? I mean, we watch games every weekend, and one goal can make a difference between a bad coach and a good coach. A few different positions in the table, you're suddenly a good coach.
Oh yeah, 1 goal. Yeah.
2 weeks later, you go back to being the bad coach again. So, no, I know how these things work. I watch it every week, and I guess from that, I just try to be careful with my own mind, I suppose, that you don't. I'm not typically a person that gets too high with highs, low with lows. I try, just the same as I do with the lads, just to try and kind of keep them at a level where we're just focused. And how far away? Well, based on what you just said, probably not far. So I think my reflection on the season's been what can get us that additional goal, what can prevent us from conceding that additional goal, and then you fall the right side of a couple of the results. Suddenly then, Paul, I think people think that if we had won 3 of those games in conference, people would be probably looking at us a lot different. So then I start to think, well, the change might not necessarily just be on the field the whole time. I also start to think how many of the results could have been changed had it have been from just things away from the field. So I'm not, and I'm sort of still on this thought, really, is to come in and make an immediate change. I think there's some things you can make an immediate change with, but ultimately what I've walked into, it probably wasn't going to be an immediate change. No, and I don't think it was just a soccer either. So I start looking and thinking, well, is it off the field where these guys, if they are a bit happier, or if they feel like the team's a bit more cohesive, or is it to do with other things that we can do outside of soccer to make sure that then if it's all intertwined, can practice be better because of some of these things, and if practice is better, then the games are better. So ultimately the easiest thing to point to is competition, and say, well, if you improve the competition, then training's going to be better, and then the games are going to be better. That's a really, really quick fix, is to just go and get better players. When you're Adrian and you've just finished bottom of the league, and you're a Division 3 school, and from the outside it doesn't all look so rosy, that's
hard.
Not so easy to do. So you have to, which is why I don't feel any different about the job as when I first started, is because I felt like this was a position that I could come in and kind of just start again. So what have I spent the last year doing? Of course, I'm trying to find more competitive players for the program, but I also feel like I've dug and I've started to now fill in like a pretty decent foundation, which isn't just based on winning and losing. It's more about the program being a mirror of maybe who I am and some of the leaders of the program, and really trying to figure that part out. Because I think that's also helped me as a coach, is like, well, I could have come into a winning program, and I could have won however many games, I probably figured more out about myself by taking over this program and figuring there's things I don't like, there's things I like.
Yeah.
So how close am I don't know. It's college soccer. Next year, I think with teams losing people, with us gaining people, it could move a bit quicker than it maybe does in perhaps higher levels. I don't know. What I can't control that, but what I do know is I feel that we're putting together a program that is more than just soccer. I think we are. We have to be more than just soccer to try and get more out of people, and then I hope, is that going to lead to like more goals? I hope so. I think there's a link between the experience that these guys have on campus, whether it be in the classroom, the dorms, at lunch, with each other on the bus, all of these things. I think are just as important as the X's and O's on the field. So I think if we can get that right, I think if we can put more into that, then that'll certainly be a plus. And then the other thing with recruiting has been trying to figure out like what spots do we need to be looking in. Because since I've come in, I've looked at the roster and I think, well, how did that player end up here? It's like that's not a spot that I would necessarily look in because. You've got various other schools that they have to choose from in that area. So really figuring, okay, what players do we need to be looking at? Where are they playing? Where am I connected and where can I get players from? So I'm an optimist. I'll tell you that I think we're much improved. How much improved are we? I only the season will tell. But I think we're on the right track, Paul.
Yeah. I gotta ask where, because now you're starting out. Well, like, where's your recruiting? And maybe it's just a particular thing about Adrian. Like, are you just recruiting in Michigan? Or are you doing Michigan, Ohio? Or are you doing right? Or and I'll ask this because I do now with everybody. Do you have? Is your goal at some point, 5 years, 7 years, once you get to a point where the program is yours, you have it where you want it, and you have the guys are all bought in, and to expand your recruiting sphere to maybe be across the country like some programs I speak with? Again, that might be an Adrian-specific question, but...
right now, it's mostly just Michigan. I think we can improve our group with Michigan players. I think there's more than enough programs, clubs to pick from here. My relations with clubs are mostly here as well. I've lived here long enough where I know maybe directors of coaching or just staff members at these clubs. Could be college programs around where you might be looking at transfers as well. So we have players from Ohio, we have players from Illinois, so there's I'm open to it, but I think my time is probably best spent in Michigan, and that's where I've been looking for the most part since the season ended. The recruiting class is coming from Michigan.
I think, I have this theory that the Midwest and West schools soccer has been getting dramatically better quicker than, I'll just say, the East Coast teams that have been doing this for so long and dominated. I don't want to say that's not the right word, but a lot of focus has been on the East Coast, and I think Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, maybe Western PA, like that whole area has a very large pool of very good soccer players to pick from, right? And it's just about making, right? Then it's your sales pitch, right? Like, hey, Adrian? Why this program? Why do you want to come? But anyhow, I could ramble. What surprised you when you got here and you started training with the guys and you did your season? Is there anything that, again, you mentioned the quality of the other teams, but specific to your program, like, was there anything that you were like, I was expecting it one way and it turns out it's this way and that's so much better? Make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I guess you would think that the group of guys that we have here would be arguing all the time and they wouldn't get along. You know, this team's finished bottom of the table for a few years now, and I actually came into the complete opposite of it. The group was actually quite together, which is a good thing. I would say on top of it, with it being a good thing, it was almost too much of a good thing in a way because the competition level probably wasn't high enough.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it was like, okay, these guys all get along pretty well. And, there's enough, I'm not walking into arguments or fights in the locker room or anything like that. So I guess I was surprised with that because I was sort of thinking that, had this have been, another program, you probably would have walked into that. I don't know. In my years of playing, I think if you're losing games, there's a bit more unrest than what there was there. But then there's also a bit of you as a coach, you're also almost suspicious as to why there's not more unrest because we're all competitive and we want to win and we're fed up with losing. Then perhaps there probably should have been more of that. So maybe that was a surprise, but I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing. Surprises? No, not really. I think I kind of knew that it was going to be a clean slate. It was going to be one where I'd have to strip it back and start again. I don't think anything. Actually, I just sort of thought of something. But this is maybe a little bit further down the line from what you're talking about. Not so much first coming in, but off the back of the season that we've just had, I think you would think that. If you were looking from the outside, nobody would want to go near the school and touch the school as a soccer player. And it's actually been it's been nice that hasn't been the feeling at all. People have been willing to come and listen to what you got to say, come and see the facilities, come and hear about the model of the school and the plan that the school has, and that. Then from there, like people get a feel for it. Oh, okay, like you've lost some games, but new coach, new start, good facilities. There's more in the pipeline with regards to facilities as well that it is really exciting. So people then come down and go, okay, it's maybe not so bad, and it's also for some people an opportunity to come in. Yeah. So as long as people were willing to give me the time of day, then I think it's been quite surprising that you weren't expecting just people to
close the door on you,
or delete your email. So that's been quite nice. But not other than that, Paul. No, not really anything surprising. No, nothing stands out.
How has the recruiting been? Like, do you have commits already? Or I know it might be a little bit early for you guys. Do you have guys who have already said, yeah, I'm in?
Yeah, we've got. We start out with a list, right? And you, however many people are on that list, you kind of identify. At least for me, I stripped it back and said, well, I think Michigan's going to be primarily where we're recruiting from. You have your list, and I'm really happy with where we're at. We do have people that are committed for 24, so we're focused on that. And then there's always people from now until probably June time that will come up, and they'll come out the blue. So I think you leave a little bit of room for that. But actually, it puts me in a spot now where I've probably recruited enough people where I can. I'm never going to relax, but you can sort of sit back for a second and.
Not happening.
No, it's not happening. I think now I maybe that's probably how recruiting's gone. I think since the season ended, as I sort of look and you're looking for, you're not going to get the complete player,
Right.
So you're looking for little bits, and then that's before you even know the player as well. Like, you have no idea what they're like. Are they actually going to be receptive to being coached? All that kind of stuff that comes later. But when you're watching a player, like, yeah, you are trying to, you go and watch these levels, and it could be that, you're watching MLS Next games, or you're watching kind of NAL games, or whatever it might be. And I think it's quite hard. I think it's quite hard to recruit, because I go and watch some games that, are slightly lower level, and you're looking to trying to find that player that maybe has a quality.
Diamond in the rough, I always say, right? Like,
I think so. I think that's that's definitely what you're trying to do. But you go and watch again some of the higher levels, and I'm looking at, well, I've had now a year of seeing what was on the pitch, and then you're trying to now go, okay, what could come into this group of players and improve them. But you can find them from anywhere. You can absolutely find them from anywhere. You just have to. I think the hardest part, maybe coaches would also, this is like, what do they have enough where the bits that they don't quite have you think they're able to get them and pick them up, and then. But most of it, honestly, isn't until somebody comes onto the visit or into your office, and you start speaking to them, and you break down the program, and you're looking for these quite basic things, and this is what it's kind of going to be like, and then from there you just have to make your judgment on that. But at the moment, I guess. We're doing well we're doing well. I think for where people might think that we should be because of where we finished. I'm happy, but there's still room for a few
always
more.
Is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's always upside until, like, you're recruiting. I always say, until no coach is ever really satisfied unless they get the best Division I class to suddenly commit to their Division III school, right? Like, that's the level, right? That's the drive, I guess, is where, like, if I could only recruit like these guys and bring them, and it would be great. But it's a lot more work than that. But I'll just say I'm a fan of you guys ever since I interviewed President Docking, and just sort of my research in the schools. So I know facility-wise and academically and all that stuff. I mean, it's got a. I mean, you don't go wrong going to a place like Adrian. I mean, just again, and the way things have sort of shaped up, and sort of the emphasis. So I do have to ask my required question, and President Docking wrote the book on how to turn around a small school, and part of that, a big pillar of that, is emphasis on athletics and the athletic experience of student athletes, and using that as a recruiting tool, and sort of, so on and so forth. So I'm just curious, like, how does that work for you, right? Like, what are, could you share, like, what are some of those minimal expectations? You're now the Adrian head soccer coach. You are expected to have a roster, I don't know what your roster size, of X, and you're expected to bring in 10 guys a season, and they have to be academically inclined, and all those different things.
To be honest, it's probably not. Yes, there's a number that we have to each year. There will be a number that we have to reach. Mm-hmm. They're quite vocal about it, but I assume it's not much different at other schools where the numbers probably need to make sense. So I don't want it to sound so kind of like cutthroat of this number,
draconian, like do this or perish.
Yeah, it's not. Yes, there's a number. I would then assume that they use the numbers from each program, what they're expected to get as some sort of projection for enrollment, and they're counting on us. They're counting on us to get our numbers. I'm not at any kind of. There's been no roster number that I'm expected to stay at. Since I've come in, I've more sort of just thought, well, this is what I think is needed to keep the level of competition, for injuries, and also the games program is quite intense, so you do need quite a few bodies.
Yeah.
But no, there's no roster number I have to stay at. I think as long as I'm probably in the region of around 28 to kind of 35, I would have thought that was I'm safe with that. But I don't think you can have your cake and eat it, really. I mean, if I'm going to sit here and say that I think it's a really good idea that they have a model and a way of working, you can't then complain when there's certain expectations, specific expectations that they want you to get to. So I have no issue.
Yeah.
I'm learning more and more about the model. I haven't read the book, but I did listen to the podcast, and I had my interview with President Docking, so I'm more than aware.
Yeah.
But I just try to educate myself. I'm working at Adrian, so I try and educate myself on what's specific to Adrian is how does President Docking want this to work, and how does the athletic department want this to work, and how do I want it to work, and the players, and then it all sort of comes together from there. And but like anywhere, there's things that I probably parts of the model where you don't. It's not dislike. That would be the wrong word. But there's parts of the model where they have to be there, whether you like it or not, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But they're just constraints like anybody else would have in their program. But I don't think they're to the point with men's soccer. I don't think there's anything to the point where it prevents us from improving the results of this program. There's nothing that stops us.
Yeah.
I think if anything, it helps us.
What's that?
I think if anything, it helps us. I think having some sort of framework to work in. Yeah. They found probably the top level. They found a framework to. You can't be everything, but you can kind of be something.
Yeah.
That has helped us all, and I think it just keeps everybody aligned. And in taking the job, I knew what they were, and I was happy to work within them.
Yeah. I'm like the uber libertarian, right? Like, leave me alone. I just want to do my thing. And it's probably one of the criticisms my bosses have always had of me. Like, you just do your own thing, and that's not how. But after speaking with him, I find like in college athletics and that sort of thinking is not good, right? Like there does have to be, and whether it's President Docking's vision and how he sort of crafted it and come up with this, hey, we're going to use athletic, right? Like there's 100 different visions depending on who your president is, but I'm a firm believer there has to be a structure, a structure for, a structure for success, right? Like, hey, if you fall within this framework and you do what we're asking you to do to support the school, you will be successful. You will be. That's a success point for you, right? And I think the snowball effect of that is if you're successful in that area, you'll be more successful on the field and so on and so forth. So that was one of my more, like I said, it's probably one of my more interesting conversations to speak with him about. But anyhow, I don't want to get you in trouble with the boss, so we'll steer clear. I do have to ask you, even though this is old, this is the second year, and it seems to things have sort of normalized. Do you like no overtimes during the regular season, or do you prefer to battle it out?
The rules of college soccer. That's one thing that I had to get to grips with that pretty quickly because there's lots of rules. Yeah. During the it was probably game to game I felt different because you're in different,
everyone
you're in
says
different
that. That game I
stages.
wanted more. This game I was
Yeah.
happy to get out.
So it didn't really bother me. It's not something I think about. I think we
Oh,
had, as a team, I think we had bigger things to think about.
right.
Those weren't any of the reasons why we didn't have the success.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything to do with the rules. Certainly nothing to do with the referees. So
Yeah. I blame the referees. You're always better off blaming the referee. I'm one, so just blame. That's fine. That guy, SimpleCoach ref guy, he's terrible. Don't have him. What are your plans? Because I think really successful programs really have a focus in on the spring, and I think there's a lot more growth that happens in the spring than in the fall, because the fall is so rapid fire games and you're just sort of constantly on the move. It's really hard. What are your plans for the spring?
Well, we'll play a couple of games at the end of spring. We use our game day for a couple of games, so we'll do that. We did that last year. I suppose then from there, you know the calendar's going to work where you're going to have many practices kind of leading up to those two games, and then those two games are kind of the end point for the season. I think practice is more about right now probably fitness, which seems like a very simple, almost boring thing. Probably if my players were listening, then they would be disappointed that it's just.
But I heard it. Beep tests every day.
Yeah, well,
Yo-yos.
no, not necessarily, but more just trying to. I felt, at least during the fall, that there was part of what we were talking about earlier in getting over the line and maybe falling a little bit short. Part of it was to do with fitness. So I think there will be a big part of it will be getting the boys into just better habits. So it's not so much, when I talk about fitness, it's not so much just about running it. From the education part, kind of helping these guys to choose the right things to eat and make sure they sleep properly and they recover properly, and all these good habits that they probably need to get in to maximize their day. So whether it be, as a student, you need to be in class, and then from there you need to be able to come to practice, and then from there you need to also be a real person and sleep and be, you've got to be social as well. So there's lots of things to it. So when I just say fitness, I guess I probably should have said that it's just, again, working towards trying to help these guys be better versions of themselves. Same when you watch recruiting as well, is how many guys you watch where, again, you're only watching them on the field, but how many of them actually have an education in how to look after themselves. These guys are fortunate. I come from a world where, you didn't really have this education. You probably didn't have time a lot of the time as well to, because you might have been working another job. And I'm just thinking back to days in England, right, where a lot of people are, working a different job, but they were still able to, be fit enough, be committed enough. And I guess it sort of just leads you to think that you do make these things too easy for them sometimes. It's so easy because I've got everything. I've got a strength and conditioning coach, if we have a nutritionist, or if we have the athletic training staff, and we have at times I
almost handed to you, right? Like, hey, look at all this stuff for you, rather than.
But it's not their fault.
No. Exactly.
They've got it all, and then it's it is my job, I suppose, just to. I'm probably helping them sometimes by maybe not giving them everything, but then when you don't give them everything, you then feel guilty, I suppose, because you could have. You end up just sort of, I guess, chasing your tail a little bit. Ultimately, you are trying to help these people. Like, you love them to bits. They're the people you've recruited. They're people you spend all the time with. But, that old sort of cliche saying of you want them to help themselves. It's a tough one. I think it's a bit of both. You've got to educate them. This is what I'm going to try, and I will continue to try and do. And then you just want people here who, will jump on board with it, try and help themselves.
it's early. It's not even Christmas. You just finished up your season. Do you have any goals in mind for what you would want for the fall season, for the 2024 season? Do you have anything that you can share, and that won't be like, inspiration board stuff for opposing teams?
No, I think for us it's the goal, whether it's probably the short and long term goal, is to have a team that is maximising everything that they've got. So like the physical pieces, like we just spoke about, and that get into better habits. A team that's cohesive, they get along, we do fun things together, we have a laugh, we make fun of each other, and they make fun of me, and we have a respect, and that's really important. You just keep things going, eating lunch together and all that kind of stuff. That's really important. So I'm not so sure a final goal. Of course, you want to win more games and finish higher, because that is the job. Like, I've not just been brought in just to keep the group happy. So you're still finding a way to win more games. Yeah. That comes with it, definitely. For me, though, I would really like to just see a group of people in front of me who are maximising their potential, maximising lifting opportunities, eating the right things, speaking to each other properly, speaking to people properly. They start to think a bit more about each other and still about themselves, but sometimes just thinking about the next person and when you do all of that, and there's probably more. I can't cover everything. There's probably a bit more, but like I'm really interested to see where then training goes and where games go. I think in training, again, a group that they understand what the session's about to be, and then they go do it. They put forth the effort and go do it. So I think many teams have all got the same goal pool. Especially in college soccer, where you have a chance for most years just to reset the button. Everybody's got the same goal. I can keep telling the boys, we want to finish first, or we want to finish in a playoff spot. But it's no good if you don't every day put forth the things that probably get you closer to it, right?
Yeah. Very true, very true. Listen, I want to be cognizant of your time. I really do appreciate this. I really do appreciate you taking the time. This was fantastic. You have a fan from afar. I'll be cheering you guys on. And appreciate you taking the time today. But I'm sure busy schedule, and like I said, with the holidays. So just want to thank you and really grateful for your time.
Well, you're welcome on campus and at a game anytime. So, and Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, thank you. You as well.